What's up, everybody? Matt Maran here for another weekly update. So there's lots and lots of exciting news to go over here this week. I apologize, this one's going to be long because there's a lot of new stuff that debuted this week at the Goodwood Festival of Speed and also lots of other interesting stuff to talk about as well. But before I get into all the news, I first want to mention I'll be doing my usual weekly live stream here on Sunday at 12:30 Eastern time here, and we'll just be hanging out, talking cars, and just having a good time answering all your questions. So join if you can. But anyway, getting into the news here this week. Like I said, Goodwood Festival of Speed. The first big debut. There's a lot of unattainable, high-end stuff, which I know some of you aren't super excited about, but the first few here are obtainable and pretty exciting. And so the first, honestly, in my opinion, the most exciting thing that's debuted in several months is the Hyundai IONIQ 5N, which we finally have the full reveal of after months and months and what feels like years of teasers here. It's now finally fully revealed here. We have all the info on it here. So it's exciting not just because it's another fast EV, but it does the fun and the speed in daring new ways, in my opinion. So for the specs here, it normally will do 601 horsepower and 545 pound-feet of torque, but with the N-Grin boost mode activated, horsepower jumps to 641 horsepower, putting it a good bit above the 576 horsepower of the Kia EV6 GT, which this does share a few things with, but it seems like even the battery and the motors are different. So it seems like even though it's on the eGMP platform, basically everything else has been changed. So the Hyundai gets unique suspension tuning, bushings, a new aluminum two-piece lower control arm, 42 additional welds, more adhesive, and reinforced motor and battery mounts and reinforced subframes, all in the pursuit of extra rigidity there. They claim a 0 to 60 time of 3.4 seconds, but car and driver already got less than that in the less powerful EV6 GT. They did a 3.1 seconds 0 to 60 in that. So I would safely bet that this thing's going to probably crack into the twos for the 5N here. So anyway, it'll top out at 161 miles per hour. Brakes are also 0.7 inches larger than the Kia's with 15.7 inch rotors with 4 piston calipers up front and 14.2 inch rotors with single piston calipers in the back. The regen brakes are also stronger and are able to do 0.6 G of braking on their own before the friction brakes even need to hop in and help. It runs forged 21 inch wheels on 275 wide tires all around that are a unique version of the Pirelli P0 electric tires. There's also a new steering rack and a stronger steering column. The drive modes are where this gets really interesting though, in my opinion. So first, there's 3 different sounds for the N Active Sound Plus system that puts sound not only through the 8 speakers inside the vehicle, but also 2 external speakers. So, I mean, Dodge is kind of doing something similar, but they're actually having real pipes. This is actually just speakers. But it's cool they're on the outside. Now, it could, end up being obnoxious. We'll have to see. But they can broadcast either a spacey noise called Evolution, a fighter jet sound called Supersonic, or the sound from the 2-liter turbo from the launcher and when it's in the ignition mode. And there's been footage of these things doing donuts and drifts and stuff, and it sounds like from the outside, as an onlooker, you can hear this thing like bouncing off the rev limiter even though it's electric. It's kind of cool in my opinion. Some people might think this is like the worst thing to ever happen to cars, but I would rather take this than something that's doing donuts in silence, personally. But anyway, on top of that, there's simulated gear shifts called E-Shift that are achieved by quickly interrupting the power delivery to simulate an 8-speed dual clutch, banging into higher gears whenever you upshift, and rev matching a downshift, complete with pops and bangs from the speaker system, again, in that ignition mode there. And in this manual mode, it'll also have a rev limiter you can bounce off of, and it'll actually even lug the powertrain if you're in too high of a gear. It'll actually limit power and simulate, you being in too high of a gear. So it actually feels like it's in manual mode, gonna involve a little bit of skill, at least having some familiarity with driving a manual in order to, get the most out of it in that manual mode there. To me, this is one of the most interesting innovations we've seen in cars in a while, in my opinion, because again, we could go into a silent, boring future, or we can manufacture this stuff in that's not there, but if you want to, be reminiscent, nostalgic about all the old, gas-powered stuff, you can have that fun without burning anything here in this. And, it's just a pretty cool idea, in my opinion. And we know that Toyota is also working on a manual for their electric vehicles, and, some others are doing things like that as well. So this probably won't be the last time we see something like this in a car, but hopefully there's many more to come, and great to see that Hyundai and their N division is spearheading this stuff and again, being daring and doing stuff out of the norm, and we'll see how it plays out for them, but I gotta respect them for it a ton. And so it also has an end drift optimizer that can simulate a clutch kick to allow drifts and donuts, and it does seem like you can change the torque split manually, but it does seem to still be always all-wheel drive to some extent. I don't think there's a fully electric rear drive mode, because I think that would then rely on just the single motor and be a lot slower, but this is of course dual motors and all-wheel drive. And the batteries are revised chemistry compared to the old one from the regular IONIQ 5, so that bumps the usable power from 77.4 kilowatt hours to 84 kilowatt hours. So hopefully range will be slightly better than the roughly 200 miles or so you get out of an EV6 GT. But again, you're talking about wider tires, even more power, a little more weight. I'm sure it's not going to do much better range, if any at all. But the good thing about the EGMP stuff from Hyundai and Kia is that they recharge very fast, some of the fastest out there. So yes, you got to stop and charge more often, but you only are sitting there for 15 minutes and then you're good to go again. So that's nice. But anyway, beyond that, they also said they focus on cooling for the car so that you can sustain 2 laps of the Nürburgring thanks to an endurance mode and various cooling upgrades. Again, brakes have extra cooling ducts and all that as well. Beyond the mechanical stuff, on the outside, you see the sportier styling here, but I'm thankful they didn't go too over the top with it. You do have a rear wing there, but it's nothing wild. And I don't know, to me, it's just nicely restrained while still looking aggressive. Inside, it gets a unique steering wheel with all those mode buttons, including that boost mode is right where your thumb should go for a NOS button. Again, being from the Fast and Furious generation, that kind of gets me a little bit giddy as well to hit that button. And otherwise, you can see that it also gets a center console there to brace yourself a little better in corners compared to the regular IONIQs having nothing there. So good to have that for a sportier vehicle. And also, it has N bucket seats, and I believe they're the same seats as the Elantra N. So we will see how that plays out, because the Elantra N driving position was a little weird in my opinion with those seats. Hopefully, it's a little bit better feeling here in the IONIQ. But anyway, there's no pricing for these yet, but just be prepared, for these to be expensive, because even the less sporty EV6 GT already is going for $63,000. So I'd fully expect these to start at least $65,000, but I wouldn't be surprised if they end up topping over 70, especially with options. Now, Hyundai may be a little conservative with the pricing, because I have been hearing that EV6 GTs have been sitting around on dealer lots. And so, once you get beyond the initial adopters, it might be a tougher sell if they go too high with the price of this. So we will see what they do. Obviously, this has a lot of power. I mean, we're talking a vehicle that'll smoke most supercars in a straight line and has all this cool tech and toys and stuff. So, I mean, a 70 grand price tag would be fully justified in my opinion. It'd be probably the cheapest way to get a sub 3 second 0 to 60 time, in something, and if it's 70 grand even. So, I mean, it's going to be totally worth it, whatever they charge, but they may try and keep it a little more reasonable, closer to 65 maybe. We'll see. But anyway, these will be arriving early next year, I think is what I heard sometime. So yes, I would say this is probably going to be the car that I'm most excited to drive in 2024, just because of, again, all the innovation, all the outside of the box thinking, all the daring choices that they made, and just it's going to be like driving a new frontier and a truly new era of vehicles that still tries to enjoy the fun stuff from the past. And so I am extremely excited about this vehicle, and if you ask me what's the most exciting thing for 2024 for me, that's it. So anyway, very exciting to see that. Ford has also had an interesting debut here this week. They debuted the Mach-E Rally at the Goodwood Festival of Speed, and while they didn't provide any info on it yet, they did confirm that it'll be available to order in the US and Europe this fall, so it is coming in just a few months here. So from the looks of it, it'll get rally-inspired wheels and tires, a slight lift, a little more body cladding that's now matte black. There's driving lights there in the grille, tow hook, front bumper that looks inspired by the Focus RS, and I think it actually looks really good, and a rear wing in the back that also seemingly is inspired by the RS, it seems. And inside, it looks to get unique seats and a dashboard pattern there. And interestingly, though, Autocar claims it's based on the regular all-wheel drive Mach-E, not on the GT versions. Now, that could be something specific for the European version, or maybe that's just the way they decided to play it for whatever reason. I'm not sure, but the head of Ford's electric vehicles told them on the idea for this came from enthusiast feedback, and it was part of their like fast track program, where this was basically from a concept to reality in 18 months. And they say that it's been tested against legendary heroes on rally surfaces, and added that to throw it around, you have to change a few things. We were blown away by the things you can do. It's amazing. So, this is certainly on trend with, everything these days getting a lifted, more rugged version. And, the Mach-E is a crossover after all, so a rugged version totally fits. And, for people who just want a little more ground clearance, since the regular Mach-E has, I think slightly less ground clearance than a regular two-door Mustang, this might actually be a really hot seller, and it would make sense if they didn't base it on the GT, if they just are selling to people who, kind of just want a Mach-E that actually has SUV ground clearance. It doesn't seem like it's a huge lift, but I still think this is going to be a really nice improvement. Rally stuff might be a little overboard for the average person that just wants, a rugged Mach-E, but I think the idea of a rugged Mach-E is really solid, and if they even did a slight different version that just got rid of the wing, and maybe the driving lights, or just toned it down a little bit, that could even be a more mainstream appealing thing. But I think as it is, this is going to be awesome, and should be very welcome, I'm sure. But interestingly, they said they had a bunch of enthusiast feedback about this. I hadn't heard a single person asking for a lifted, rugged version of the Mach-E, but, the logic checks out, so, we'll see how well it does for them, but very interesting to hear that. In other awesome news, Aston Martin has revealed the Valour, which is this limited production homage to the V8 Vantages of the 1970s, and also the one-off Victor that blew everyone away not too long ago. So in my opinion, this doesn't look quite as good, but still pretty cool. Let me know your thoughts on the styling there in the comments below. It's based on the current Vantage, but does have totally unique looks. It also has a unique powertrain setup, though. The all-important thing, this runs the twin-turbo V12 from the V12 Vantage, but now it's combined with a 6-speed manual transmission. It does 705 horsepower, 555 pound-feet of torque, and gets 6-piston carbon ceramic brakes up front, 4-piston rear calipers, and runs through 275 wide tires in the front and 325s in the rear. The interior is Vantage-based, as you can see, but it has that gloriously beautiful shifter that's just a work of art. And unfortunately, though, the downside is only 110 of these will be built, and even though the price wasn't given, they're all already spoken for, and I'm sure they're going for millions of dollars, and will obviously just all be hidden away in garages and hardly ever driven. So that's the downside of it. But at least 110 is a little more than the average limited run car, that's multi-million dollars. Yes, it'd be cool to see V12 live on with a manual in something a little more mainstream from Aston Martin down the road, but for now, still cool that it's out there, even if it is just, a collector's item. Great to see they made it nonetheless. And some other very expensive supercar news here. Koenigsegg has revealed the production version of the Gemera and all its crazy specs. So first off, while the Gemera can still come with the interesting 2-liter turbo 3-cylinder called the Tiny Friendly Giant, there's now an option to swap in the twin-turbo V8 from the Jesko, which I guess the engineers were just like, let's see if it fits. And I don't know if maybe they had some pushback from people saying, I don't want a 3-cylinder engine in a Koenigsegg, which I could totally, I guess that there are some people that probably had some objections about that. But so now you can still get the 3-cylinder, but you can now get this option for this twin turbo V8, which I think probably 99.9% of buyers will probably go for. So this top version of the Gemera now, when combined with a new e-motor called Dark Matter, which I'll talk more about in a minute, the total power output for this thing comes to 2,300 horsepower and 2,028 pound-feet of torque. The twin turbo V8 alone does 1,500 horsepower, and then these things still have all-wheel drive and seat 4 people as well. So those electric motors will provide the power there for the front wheels. And so that new Dark Matter e-motor does 800 horsepower and 922 pound-feet of torque on its own. And this is hilarious because, obviously this is very high-end, very expensive, but BMW has their next-gen e-motor, and they're really proud of it having 400-some horsepower on its own, and even Volkswagen having stuff and Volvo having stuff now 400-some horsepower from a single motor, which is certainly impressive, but this is double that. It's just wild, and it uses some pretty wild tech too. With it doubles the amount of phases for the electric motor from the originally planned 3-phase motor to a 6-phase motor, and it uses a combination of radial flux and axial flux designs to make a new Raxial motor, they're calling it. And because it's so powerful, only one of these motors is needed instead of the 3 weaker e-motors that were originally planned, so it actually managed to drop the weight of this vehicle vehicle and make it easier to package. It's also now paired to an evolution of the Lightspeed transmission from the Jesko. Instead of, they were originally going to do a different kind of transmission, but now they're doing the one from the Jesko, but it's a evolved version of that transmission that's now called the Lightspeed Tourbillon, which is lighter, smaller, and works even better. And I probably butchered how to say that, but basically it uses the same kind of design mechanism as what you see on very high-end watches to help them keep more accurate time. And so that apparently was a genius way. They were able to package things even better so that the twin-turbo V8 fit, the dark matter motor fit, and you have, you know, a 4-seat vehicle that isn't enormous, that can do 2,300 horsepower. Wild stuff. I feel like Koenigsegg must have engineers from outer space or something. This is like alien tech we have in this thing. It's wild. So, if for whatever reason you still want the 3-cylinder engine in a multi-million-dollar car, you can still get that, and that still is very crazy. And with that new dark matter motor upgrade, it now does 1,400 horsepower and 1,365 pound-feet of torque, which still, I'm sure, would be plenty fast. But, you know, I mean, when you're talking about this kind of money, it's only, by the way, $400,000 extra to go for that twin-turbo V8. And when you're talking to the billionaires that buy these things, $400,000, I mean, that's, you know, like a nice weekend at the beach or something for them. So, I mean, it doesn't even, you know, they would all go for the twin-turbo V8, you know? So it's just crazy that, you know, they're even offering that 3-cylinder still. But it's just awesome that they, you know, were able to offer this twin-turbo V8. And what a wild, wild car. So the first deliveries will arrive to those very lucky owners in early 2025. So cool to see that. Ferrari has revealed a one-off customer commission this week called the KC23. And I'll be brief with this one because it's not street legal. And it's just basically a 48 GT3 underneath. It's just a race car with a unique body, essentially. It's a sweet body, though. It's got some active aero panels over the engine and behind the front wheels. And so those components and the styling, you know, could preview what we're going to be seeing from future Ferrari hypercars or even supercars here, and, you know, production stuff outside of this one-off. So we'll have to see. But anyway, a cool look nonetheless. Another fun but unobtainable car here that debuted was the Porsche Vision 357 Speedster concept. And it looks just like the coupe that was revealed in January, aside from the roof removal, of course. But interestingly, instead of running a 4-liter flat 6 like the coupe, this one uses the electric setup from the Mission R concept, hypothetically at least. I mean, who knows if this thing actually even drives. But of course, it's just a concept, at least for now. So I think maybe this was just a way of them proving that that Mission R setup would also fit in something that doesn't have a roof, maybe. I don't know. Still cool nonetheless. I would love to see some type of production version of a, you know, 357 someday down the road. Or maybe they could even use that for the name for the new Boxster and Cayman, if they don't mind throwing those names in the bin. You know, just call it 357 and the 357 Speedster. That'd be awesome. We'll see. But anyway, interesting to you know, see that. Another fun retro concept that debuted was the Triumph TR25 concept, done by a company called Makina, which is apparently a super high-end, like, custom car builder. And they got permission from BMW, who now owns the rights to the Triumph brand, to actually call this a Triumph. And so unlike all those other wild supercars, this concept actually has a more humble approach, surprisingly. And underneath the very cool body is a BMW i3 chassis. So just a single rear motor, does, you know, maybe 100 some horsepower, and then has that same battery and motor, you know, setup. And hypothetically, you know, if they were to build something like this, they could make it actually pretty cheap and still pretty fun if it's, you know, really lightweight, you know, but very small battery, little electric motor. There could actually return to like an electric Triumph to what its roots actually are. And if these companies don't do it, I hope that somebody, you know, takes some notes here and says, hey, let's take, you know, even like Volkswagen or something, take a little 200 horsepower rear motor from a normal ID4 or something, pop that into some bare bones little thing, and just have fun, you know, and sell it cheap. I don't know. I wish someone would do something like that. But anyway, instead, everyone has to have 3 seconds 0 to 60 times and all that, which is fun on its own. But, you know, I think there's a case to be made for stuff like this. So anyway, yeah, unfortunately, this is just an homage, and they say it's a one-of-a-kind show car, sadly. But, you know, maybe, again, something like this will come to production someday from them or someone else, because it seems like a really promising concept. And another cool new British sports car that actually is a concept for now, but will be coming to production and coming to the US, is the Caterham Project V. And so it's slightly smaller than a Porsche Boxster, but on a wheelbase that's 4.7 inches longer, which allows this to be a 2+1, at least in the concept setup. They're hoping to have a version that is a 2+2 setup eventually when this does come to production, if that ends up happening. They still have to line up financing and do testing and stuff, so this could still not end up coming to fruition, but their intention is for it to actually come to production. So Tau Design took the design that was originated from the guy that designed the Lykan Hypersport, and then they turned it into a car that could actually be produced. And so the chassis is a blend of carbon fiber and aluminum, and it's targeted to only weigh 2,624 pounds, which is extra impressive because this is an electric car with a 55 kilowatt hour battery that's split in two to provide a lower seating position. It powers a single rear motor that does 268 horsepower and can do a 4.5 second 0 to 62 mile per hour time. The battery is estimated to do 249 miles of range on the easier WLTP test cycle, so call it low 200s here in the States, and it can charge from 20% to 80% in 15 minutes, so pretty good there. Also impressive is that despite the low weight, it also has a double wishbone suspension front and rear, along with adjustable dampers. Inside it is a pretty simple interior, but it does have Apple CarPlay and a trunk that's big enough for a couple of weekend getaway bags, they say. And so Caterham says they still need to refine the aero a bit and again do some more testing. They say it should take about 3 years to hopefully get everything lined up to get this produced, but they're estimating the price to be just over $100,000 when it does arrive. And the very best news is that yes, it is coming to the US, and that it's not insane with the performance or the price tag, relatively speaking, for a British low volume sports car. And I think this is kind of be a cool successor to like the Lotus Exige or something. Obviously there's the Emira now that Lotus has, but I think this is for someone who wants an EV thing, a very cool new option, and it'll be a great, probably the only competitor that's going to be electric to the new Porsche Boxster Cayman that's coming, that'll be electric as well. So anyway, very interesting to hear that, and I think it's a really promising little car. And for the last Goodwood reveal here, Maserati has revealed the final V8 powered Maseratis, the Ghibli 334 Ultima and the Levante V8 Ultima. And so they both get the 3.8 liter twin turbo V8 doing 572 horsepower and 538 pound-feet of torque and a 3.9 seconds 0 to 62 mile per hour time. Unfortunately, they didn't show any good pictures of all of them. We have a few close-ups and that's it, strangely enough. But the 334 in the Ghibli is for its top speed in kilometers, which is 206.3 miles per hour, which is pretty crazy for the little Ghibli, honestly. And they say that this makes it the fastest internal combustion engine sedan in the world. So I guess it just has a higher top speed that isn't electronically limited like the BMWs and the Audis, which I feel like could probably cross the 200 mark if they tried. I don't know. But anyway, beyond the engine, they'll get a carbon fiber spoiler, unique wheels and tires and paint, along with badges inside and out. Sadly, only 103 of these will be built of each edition, and there's no word on how many will be coming to the States, if any at all. And even though, this V8 didn't sound quite as good as the old naturally aspirated V8s from Maserati, it still was a really awesome motor. I did try it out in the Levante several years ago, and the Quattroporte for that matter, and it's fantastic. Sounds great still, and it'll be sad to see just the end of the Maserati V8, because again, they were just so sweet sounding. And especially that naturally aspirated one of those older ones was, those always sounded so good. So sad to see Maserati killing off the V8, especially so soon, since they don't need to kill it off super soon. They could keep it around longer, even if it's just a carryover. But unfortunately, it seems like they have to get rid of it sooner for whatever reason. And so, cheers to the Maserati V8. If I wasn't filming this in the morning, I would totally take a drink in honor of the Maserati. But anyway. So long, Maserati V8. It's been a good run. In other potential engine news here, we have some interesting rumors here about 3 different Toyotas getting some new engines. So first, drive.com.au has what they claim a leaked screenshot showing engine options for the new Land Cruiser that's coming here, known as the Prado elsewhere in the world. And while 3 engines will be offered globally, according to this screenshot, I'll talk about the only one we'll probably get here in the States, which is the 2.4 liter turbo 4 from the Tacoma, which is listed there in the screenshot. So output wasn't given, but the Tacoma has 3 different outputs. There's 228 horsepower base one, 278 horsepower for the mainstream ones, and then there's the 326 horsepower and 465 pound-feet of torque from the hybridized version of that. And so That'd be a big shock, because if it does stick to 4 cylinders, for one, this would be the first time the Land Cruiser and the Land Cruiser Prado have ever been offered with a 4-cylinder, and also this would really give it a huge differentiation between this and the GX, which gets the twin-turbo V6 as standard. They did say there's going to be, I think, a hybrid, version down the road, and that could potentially maybe downsize. We'll see. But for now, that's a big differentiator between the GX and Land Cruiser, potentially, if this turns out to be true. And so that could really help bring the price way down to give you a comfortable distance between this and the Lexus. And I would assume if it's going to be, something that's this large, as large as the GX, I think they would probably have to put the most powerful motor from the Tacoma in it, just so it's not too slow. Not like, Land Cruiser owners need a ton of power, but, 228 horsepower would seem pretty underpowered in my opinion. 278 horsepower would maybe barely cut it, maybe for a base one, but I would expect this to have the 326 horsepower, top hybrid version. Potentially, in my opinion. We will see what they do if this turns out to be accurate. But then that still could carve out some space for the 4Runner. If the 4Runner only runs like the non-hybrid 278 horsepower thing, that could be even slower than the Land Cruiser, which maybe does the 326. And you have a nice little hierarchy, and you climb, up the ladder however you want. And so we'll see what ends up happening, but at least thankfully we've started to see some more teasers here for the Land Cruiser. We just saw that new one, last week. So hopefully you don't have too much longer to wait to find out all the official info on the new Land Cruiser and what it's going to have going for it. So anyway, though, very interesting to hear that rumor. Now, for a more sketchy rumor here, we have 2 different Japanese magazines that have conflicting reports about this next generation GR86, which I first have to say I'm just very happy there's even any talk or rumors about a next generation GR86 in this day and age where these types of vehicles are getting less and less appreciated every single day. But, so the underlying theme here is that whatever is coming will most likely get a version of the GR Corolla's turbo 3-cylinder inline, engine. And so that's the only thing that it seems like all these reports can agree on, but from there they diverge wildly. So I talked about the same idea about 10 months ago, actually, about it being a 1.4 liter version of the GR Corolla motor. And this was Australian website carsales.com.au that was talking about this, again, almost a year ago. So for these more recent rumors, that we have a little more details, but again, they're going out on a limb here, I think, because they're wildly different from the magazines here. So the more credible one, in my opinion, just based on common sense, comes from MagX, which drive.com.au has translated. And so they claim that Toyota will develop the next-gen GR86 without Subaru's help, since development ties with Subaru have supposedly eroded since the chief engineer for the BRZ and 86 and the Supra has since retired. And I guess he was really the bridge that's, made these partnerships possible and make them happen. And without him there to spearhead that again, it seems like Toyota may just go back to doing their own thing. So this also would then mean they can be freed up to ditch the boxer engine, which was never really part of the 86's ethos, for the original formula anyway. And so the MagX rumor says that it will use the 1.4 liter 3-cylinder turbo version of the GR Corolla motor, but it'll also add a hybrid assistance to it between the motor and the transmission, which would mean that potentially then it could still be a manual as well, I think, which would be great. So this would boost power and efficiency, potentially over 300 horsepower, and I think both magazines are suggesting around 300 horsepower or more. So be definitely very different than the driving a slower car fast kind of thing you get with the current generation cars. But since Subaru wouldn't want to probably sell a car without a boxer engine, a new BRZ according to MagX wouldn't happen according to this plan, but Subaru would still likely build the car for Toyota in their current BRZ and GR86 factory, because I guess Subaru for some reason wouldn't want to repurpose that factory for something else like EVs, and instead would want to keep building the car for Toyota. That part I don't know, but I don't know the ins and outs there, so that could very well happen. But Subaru ever selling a rear-wheel drive car in the first place was always kind of a weird thing that was off-brand for them. And again, I think with the chief engineer, they're really convincing them to go for it was great, and going for it for a second generation also great. But again, the BRZ, as much as I loved it, I've owned one, and I definitely want to own another one someday. But it just did always seem kind of off-brand for Subaru, But this would kind of be the perfect out for them. If Toyota's doing their own thing, then Subaru would probably just drop the BRZ and, forget about it. So That's what the report is saying from MagX. They say that this new GR86 would arrive in 2028, and that sounds like a pretty realistic timeline. At that point, you're talking about something that's coming, roughly, 6 or 7 years after, and that's about what I would expect for this lifespan for the current generation GR86 and BRZ. But the more interesting, and in my opinion, way more far-fetched, I don't even know why, there's other websites that are reporting this other rumor, and anyone that knows anything about these cars or just the realities of production should know that this is completely out of the question. But I'm going to address it here just so that it's covered and we can put it to rest. So Best Car Magazine, they claim that the GR86 would retain the full 1.6 liter displacement of the 3-cylinder turbo while also still getting hybrid help and doing 300 horsepower at least. And so that part, totally plausible, could totally use that, larger displacement. They say that the current platform would have to be scrapped entirely because of the crash structure needing too many modifications to work with an inline engine, which I have heard from Toyota people in the past, but also they do already have a GR Corolla powered GR86 running a hydrogen combustion engine setup in a race series already. Now, maybe they don't have to worry about crash structures in that race car, but it does fit in the current car. So either there's something I'm missing here, or that's just dead wrong already. But they also claim, because they're going to have to do a new platform, they claim they're going to be using for this new GR86 a shortened and stiffened version of the current gen, very old Lexus IS platform. Which, okay, maybe if they want to save some money on development costs, recycling an old platform makes sense, but that platform sounds like it's going to be heavy, and is it really going to be that sporty if it's just a shortened version of the IS? Obviously, they'd have some heavy modifications to it, but to me, that was like a what? Like, you're going to use the IS platform? I don't know if I buy that here. And to make it even more far-fetched, they also claim that Subaru would still sell a version of this car with a Toyota inline 6 or inline 3 and a turbo engine, which Subaru mechanics would just completely, they wouldn't know what to do because they've only worked on boxer engines their whole life. And then it's like, ta-da, here's a brand new inline engine. That would be a nightmare from a dealer side standpoint. But I guess Toyota engineers have dealt with that, or Toyota mechanics with the GR86, but still, the other thing that really makes this completely implausible, in my opinion, is the fact that they say that this all new, totally changed, brand new platform, all this stuff is going to be arriving for the GR86 and the BRZ by 2025, just 4 years after this current generation has debuted, back in 2021 for the 2022 model year, which, for one, that's way too short of a lifespan to ever have justified even building the second generation car. And I also feel like we probably would have seen some spy mules around, but it's just, there's no way that 4 years after you're going to have another new, completely from the ground up, brand new sports car. It just, none of that timeline makes any sense to me at all. So yes, if they can, like I said, maybe fit the GR Corolla motor in some kind of a special edition GRMN 86 version or something for this current generation, maybe that could come by 2025, but not something with a brand new platform and a completely new vehicle. There's no way. So for all those reasons, I'm out with that rumor. I don't think that one is even remotely plausible. But like I said, bottom line here, sounds like GR Corolla ish power is coming for a rear-wheel drive 2-door coupe from Toyota at some point down the road is probably the common denominator here, which is great news on its own. The details don't matter for now. Again, I realistically think we're another 5 years away from this thing ever seeing the light of day, but great to hear that nonetheless. Then we will certainly see what happens, and I'll keep you guys posted on any new rumors or info we get on that. Another rumor that sounds pretty unlikely, again, comes from Best Car Magazine here, which is continuing to fuel the rumors about the Supra getting the top-performing S58 BMW motor for a limited production run Supra as a final send-off here. So they're claiming the GRMN version will be getting the motor from the BMW M4 CSL, which... they say in here it's going to do like 550 horsepower, and I think if you translate that could be the same, like 543 horsepower as the M4 CSL, but I do not think there's any chance that BMW is going to sell that top-tuned version to Toyota. I feel like they're kind of frenemies. Maybe they're warmer than I think, but I don't think that very coveted, very sought after motor is going to be shipped off and put into the Toyota. I just don't see that happening. I think realistically, yes, I think there is going to be some kind of send off Supra that will have more power. It could even get, like the new M2 motor, that has like 475 horsepower is what they're planning supposedly for the 2024 model year. So that still would be, over 100 more horsepower than the current Supra. It would be an amazing wild send off and will be awesome. So, I think there's certainly something there. We've heard lots of rumors about this, but the rumors have to be checked and they have to be within the realm of reason. And to me, you're not going to get some crazy exclusive motor for this car. I could be wrong. I'd love to be wrong. 550 horsepower in a Supra sounds amazing, but I temper your expectations and say, maybe around 500 horsepower if you're lucky. And of course, this motor only pairs up with the automatic, I believe, for these higher tuned versions. I guess maybe they could do like the base M3 motor, which is like 483 horsepower, I think, with a manual. So maybe there's a chance of a manual if they keep the power under 500, but over 500, yeah, there's no way. It'll be automatic only for sure. And that's the end of that. So we'll see. They also claim that 2025 would be the last model year for the Supra, most likely, because they're saying that this GRMN version would debut by the end of this year. So I guess you could even say potentially a 2024 model year, but we already have 2024 model year stuff with the 45th anniversary edition. So I'm guessing that they would hold off till the 2025 model year for this, but we will see if any of this stuff turns out to be true. But very, very interesting to see that. One vehicle that apparently will not be arriving this year for sure is the Chevy Blazer EV SS. So GM Authority spotted a change on the Chevy website that now claims that the Blazer EV SS will be available the spring of 2024 instead of the previously stated fall timeline of this year. So there's no reason given yet for the delay, but with the slow production of GM's EVs in general, I think they're way down in production on the Hummer compared to last year. The Lyrics, they've only built a couple thousand of for some reason. I think they just can't get battery stuff. And so it just really, slowing down their production of their EVs. So if they can't even build the stuff that's already out that everyone has mile-long wait lists for, I think they can certainly delay this. It also could be that, this is going to be the vehicle that debuts this new software. Now, it seems like all the other versions of the Blazer will, still be on time, so maybe that software is on schedule, but that could also be another reason why maybe they're delaying this. I don't know, but the regular Blazer EVs, though, for the 2LT and the RS versions, those will be coming, though, this summer, supposedly, even though, at least as far as I know, I haven't heard any info about any kind of, launch or debut or anything like that as far as filming opportunities go or anything. So we will see, but summer is already, halfway over basically. So the clock is ticking there if they want to stick to that timeline as well. So we will see how that plays out. But anyway, very interesting to hear that about the SS version. Hyundai here has made some changes to the Tucson for 2024, and while most of the changes are more mild, but still very good nonetheless, the biggest change here is that the N-line trim that used to be powered by the base 2.5-liter 4-cylinder, like 180 horsepower, now it's exclusively powered by the hybrid powertrain, thankfully, which gives you the 1.6-liter turbo and electric motors for 226 horsepower, 258 pound-feet of torque, much more sporty and in line with what you're probably expecting from an N-line version, although I still don't know why they haven't put the Sonata N-line 2.5-liter turbo 4 in and have 300 horsepower in a Tucson. That would be awesome, I think. Or even call it the Tucson N if you have to. But I think that would be sweet. For some reason they haven't. I don't know why, but still good that they've given it that power boost here for the N-Line to actually have a little bit of power to go along with the sportier looks. Other Tucson improvements for 2024, which are very notable, are that it now gets rear side airbags and rear seat pretensioners and force limiters. So to make it perform much better in the new IIHS small overlap crash test that focuses on rear seat safety, which has been shown in this new test to be very much lacking with a lot of submarining and rear seatbelts not tensing up whenever you're in accidents and having people go all over the place. So Hyundai was really fast about boom, next model year we're putting that stuff in, and so now it should get top marks, I'm sure, for safety tests again. And great to see them make that change so quickly and really improve that rear seat safety. So really admirable and great to see that change so fast. And so there's no updated pricing for these new Tucsons yet, but expect the current $35,000 N-Line price to rise, of course, thanks to the hybrid stuff and the extra little enhancements there for the safety. So I'd safely say it'd be 37.5, maybe a little more. We'll see. But anyway, very interesting to hear that. And right at the end of last week, Mercedes announced that they too are hopping on the NACS bandwagon and are ditching the CCS connectors in 2025 for the NACS port and gaining access to Tesla Superchargers and their whole network here sometime next year by using an adapter for the current CCS port Mercedes EVs. And so they also said their whole planned 400 charging hubs with over 2,500 chargers that they announced back at CES in January for the States. All those hubs will begin opening at least the first few by the end of this year, and that they will have both CCS and NACS plugs there. So they're going to be future-proofing those. And great to again see that Mercedes is not only, hopping on the Tesla bandwagon, but also putting out their own charging network with a ton of chargers to really improve that infrastructure. And so great to hear that. But the rise of EV popularity may be slowing down a bit here, with multiple websites this week reporting about this trend that we've been seeing recently, where first Volkswagen last week said they're slowing down production of the ID4 and even the brand new ID7 in Germany due to slowing sales and them thinking that the EV market's kind of cooling off. And even Ford is now having record amounts of Mach-E's and Lightning sitting on lots, with dealers saying that they've never had these things just sitting around in stock, and they're actually rejecting allocations because they have too many of them. So if you want one of those vehicles, you can now maybe finally get a good deal on one, or at least MSRP. And so Canadian Mercedes dealers also claim Mercedes is reconsidering their EV strategy to possibly slow down the whole rollout in general, because again, they're starting to see that, it's this trend we've seen a lot of other products in the past where you have early adopters get really excited, there's tons of demand, it's red hot, and then all those people get their cars, and then they have their cars. And then to go to that next step of convincing the other people that are on the fence, for whatever reason, whether it's price or just other EV holdups, that's kind of where it seems like this is stalling out a little bit. And, we will see if it does eventually get over the hump and, actually manage to, go more mainstream than just those 10% of buyers in the market that are excited about this. We'll see, but it seems like that's something that's starting to happen with a lot of these car companies, slowing this stuff down. I think for a lot of the European companies, they're also disappointed in the charging infrastructure, especially in the States right now, and that's of course going to improve, but for the meantime, they kind of want to slow the EV rollout until all that stuff actually comes online, it seems. So we will see how that all plays out. But I mean, like I've said many times before in the past, all these companies have targets and goals for, this date. We want to have, all the gas engines go away. But things change. We have mild economic setbacks, and all of a sudden it's like, whoa, wait a minute now. We got to slow everything down. So, and they just have dealers having normal inventory, finding like, whoa, this isn't right. We need to slow this down. So, this is why don't fret about all these deadlines and stuff just yet, because as you can see, with the slightest change of the wind, things can go completely out the window. So, just live in the now and, don't worry about all these crazy timelines. But anyway, interesting to hear those reports. And for the last news story here this week, I wanted to end on a fun, positive little surprise here. So Volkswagen this week has teased a new Passat. Yes, the Passat, which we thought, at least I thought, was completely dead and gone. There was a final edition here for the States, and, it rode off into the sunset about a year or two ago, and that was the end of the Passat, at least here for the States. Maybe this is only for Europe. They haven't specified yet, but turns out that in Germany, they are working on a new Passat, and so it might have a future in the US. We'll see, especially if ID7 reception, again, getting back to this whole hesitation with the EVs. If ID7, doesn't have the kind of reception they're hoping for, then maybe they'll be like, whoops, we need to make sure we still have a sedan. Let's bring the Passat over. And even though I say sedan, interestingly, it's going to be sold, at least in Europe here, exclusively as a wagon. So it shares much of its underpinnings here with the coming next generation Tiguan debuting later this year, which both ride on the new MQB Evo platform. They'll also share many interior components like the big screen. The powertrains will be shared as well, with Europe having a variety to choose from, including gas, diesel, hybrid, and plug-in hybrids. It'll also get the DCC adaptive dampers from like the Tiguan's getting as standard, interestingly enough. And the Passat is going to be debuting actually here at the end of August, so coming really soon too. And so I'm really hoping this comes to the US, especially as a wagon. It could be a cool, alternative to like a Subaru Outback, especially if they do like a lifted all-track version. It'll be really cool. We will see. But I'm not holding my breath for that because they also like to keep some of this stuff, for Europe only in many cases. So we will see. But interesting to hear that the Passat actually isn't totally dead like we thought. So great news there. Lastly, I want to thank all of you that are members of the Maran Motoring Club. So we did have a few new members join here this week. Thanks to Kyle's gifting of memberships here during the last live stream last week. And so huge thanks, Kyle, for gifting those memberships. I really appreciate the support. And so we did have 3 people that were able to rejoin and 2 brand new members, which I want to give a warm welcome to. So big welcome here to EV and Nathaniel Rudolph. Thank you both so much for joining in that live stream there and snatching up those gifted memberships. And if you can, make sure you join in the live streams here where all those members will be getting priority answering in those live streams. But for anyone else who would like to join, become a member, there's always join buttons here on the video page, on the channel page, and a link in the description. But anyway, thank you all very much for watching. Let me know your thoughts on all this stuff in the comments below. I'll see you guys in the next one. Please also leave a like and subscribe to keep these videos coming. Take care.